The story of the Black Mafia Family, or BMF, is the classic tale of two brothers who went from Detroit's gritty streets to building one of the biggest, flashiest drug empires in the United States. Demetrius, Big Meech, Flenory and Terry, Southwest T, Flenory, didn't just want success, they wanted power, fame, and a lasting legacy. But in the end, what brought them up also brought them crashing down. Growing up in Detroit. Imagine Detroit in the 1970s and 80s. It was a gritty, rough place, and it was even harder for families in working-class neighborhoods. This was the world Big Meech and Southwest T grew up in. Life wasn't easy, and their family often struggled to make ends meet. But even then, the brothers had big dreams. They weren't just thinking about a way out of poverty. They wanted success on a massive scale. While they watched others around them take traditional routes to escape their circumstances, Demetrius and Terry knew that wasn't the path for them. They were looking for something bigger, something more impactful. Detroit's streets taught them about survival and hustle early on, and it wasn't long before they saw an opportunity to make real money. They didn't want to just get by. They wanted power, wealth, and a lifestyle most people couldn't even dream of. So, by the time they were in their teens, the Flenory brothers had their eyes set on a path that would change their lives forever. Getting into the drug trade. In the 1980s, the drug scene in Detroit was booming, and Demetrius and Terry saw it as a way to rise above their circumstances. At first, it was small-time hustling, just enough to make some cash and learn the ropes. But they were smart, observant, and strategic. They studied the business, watching how the network operated, building connections, and figuring out who held the real power. It wasn't long before they climbed the ranks. By the time they reached adulthood, they had built a solid foundation. They weren't just making money. They were building something with structure and ambition. And this was only the beginning. The Flenory brothers had a vision that stretched far beyond Detroit. They were looking at the big picture, seeing how they could expand, scale, and turn their small-time hustle into a nationwide operation. Expansion to Atlanta and Los Angeles. In the 1990s, Big Meech and Southwest T made a move that would change everything. Detroit was their starting point, but they knew if they wanted to grow, they'd have to go bigger. So, they set their sights on two major cities, Atlanta and Los Angeles. This wasn't just a random move, it was strategic. By expanding to these cities, they could reach a whole new level of influence and power. Los Angeles gave them direct access to drug suppliers, allowing them to bring in large quantities of cocaine at a lower cost. Meanwhile, Atlanta was a perfect distribution hub. It was growing, it had a vibrant nightlife, and it was a city where people from all over the South and East Coast came to party. For BMF, Atlanta wasn't just another city, it was their gateway to the entire country. They were building a network that stretched across multiple states, and they were doing it with style. As the Flenory brothers set up operations in these cities, BMF's influence exploded. They weren't just selling drugs anymore, they were creating an empire. This period of growth saw BMF evolve from a local operation to a nationwide powerhouse. Every year, their network grew, their profits surged, and their reputation in the underworld solidified. Building the Black Mafia Family. By the early 2000s, the Flenory brothers had turned their operation into something few people had seen before. They weren't just local dealers anymore, they were nationwide suppliers. And they gave it a name that would become legendary, the Black Mafia Family. BMF wasn't your typical street gang or drug operation. It was sophisticated, organized, and highly efficient, almost like a shadow corporation with its own code of conduct. The Flenory brothers were moving hundreds of kilos of cocaine every month, and their network reached far beyond Detroit. From Los Angeles to Atlanta, they had a sprawling distribution system, supplying drugs across the U.S. and bringing in millions of dollars every year. But this wasn't just about moving drugs. It was about building a legacy. Big Meech and Southwest T knew they had to run things like a business if they wanted to stay on top. They developed methods to transport drugs discreetly and launder their profits in a way that kept them under the radar. Running BMF meant thinking like CEOs. They had structure, hierarchy, and rules. Loyalty was everything, and secrecy was non-negotiable. If you were part of BMF, you followed the code. This wasn't a loose network of dealers. It was an underground society with members who treated their roles seriously, like employees working to build something bigger than themselves. For a while, BMF seemed unstoppable. Entering the music industry. While the Flenory brothers had already built an empire in the drug world, Big Meech dreamed of expanding into something different, the music industry. For him, being a behind-the-scenes figure in the criminal underworld wasn't enough. He wanted his name out there, in lights. He didn't just want to be a drug kingpin, he wanted to be a cultural icon. So, he took a bold step and founded BMF Entertainment, a record label that quickly made waves in Atlanta's thriving hip-hop scene. This wasn't just a hobby, it was a strategic move to legitimize BMF and create a brand that could outlast the drug empire they'd built. BMF Entertainment wasn't just about money, it was about influence. Big Meech supported and promoted up-and-coming artists like Young Jeezy, turning BMF into a significant player in the music world. With this move, Big Meech wasn't just building a record label, he was creating a lifestyle brand that blurred the lines between the drug world and hip-hop culture. His vision was that one day, BMF would be remembered as much for its cultural impact as for its criminal enterprise. And as they threw legendary parties and rubbed shoulders with top artists, BMF Entertainment became more than just a business. It was a symbol of power and influence. The downfall begins. For years, Big Meech and Southwest T had been living large, running a drug empire that stretched across the U.S. But while their flashy parties, luxury cars, and ties to hip-hop stars boosted their reputation, they also attracted the wrong kind of attention. Law enforcement couldn't ignore BMF's growing influence and the extravagant way Big Meech displayed his wealth. The DEA began monitoring the brothers, piecing together an operation that was bigger and more intricate than most had imagined. They tapped phones, planted surveillance, and conducted undercover operations, all aimed at understanding the full scope of BMF's activities. While Terry, or Southwest T, tried to keep a low profile and managed BMF from Los Angeles with more caution, Big Meech was the face of BMF, attracting eyes from all directions. And those eyes weren't just watching, they were gathering evidence. By 2005, the DEA and other agencies had enough to move in. A massive operation was launched, taking down not only the Flenory brothers, but many of their associates. It was a devastating blow to BMF's empire. What was once a well-oiled, seemingly untouchable organization was now falling apart. The evidence against them was overwhelming, with wiretaps, financial records, and testimonies piling up. The case revealed the extent of BMF's drug trafficking and money laundering, painting a picture of an empire that law enforcement couldn't ignore any longer. Sentencing and the end of an era. The fallout was swift. Both Demetrius and Terry were handed 30-year federal prison sentences. The brothers who had lived like kings, ruling an empire built on ambition and risk, now faced the reality of serving decades behind bars. For BMF, this was the end. An empire that had been carefully constructed over years of planning, networking, and risk-taking was now dismantled. The men who had once run a criminal organization with the sophistication of a Fortune 500 company were now prisoners. Their sentencing marked the official end of BMF as the world knew it. The once powerful organization, whose reach extended into the music industry and commanded loyalty from countless followers, was over. The Flenory brothers, whose names were spoken with reverence in both the criminal and hip-hop worlds, were now just numbers in the federal prison system. The legacy of BMF today, BMF's story continues to captivate the public. Documentaries, TV series, and books explore their rise and fall, turning the Black Mafia family into a cultural phenomenon. But while there's a certain allure to the luxurious lifestyle and daring ambitions of Big Meech and Southwest T, their story is a cautionary tale. It's the story of two brothers from Detroit who transformed themselves from street hustlers into empire builders, only to pay the ultimate price for their pursuit of power and wealth. The legacy of BMF is complex. It's a tale of ambition, showing what can be achieved with vision and persistence, but it's also a reminder of the risks involved in the pursuit of power through illegal means. Big Meech and Southwest T reached unimaginable heights, both in their wealth and influence, but ultimately, they lost it all. In the end, BMF's story isn't just about the brothers' rise and fall. It's about the double-edged sword of ambition. For every dollar made and every new territory conquered, there was a new risk, a higher chance of exposure, and ultimately, an inevitable crash. From the rough streets of Detroit to the heights of fame and fortune, the Flenory brothers built an empire only to see it crumble. Their journey reminds us of the allure of power, but also the cost of flying too close to the sun. Thanks for watching. Please like the video, press the subscribe button, and also drop your thoughts in the comment section.